Welcome to the Tuesday edition of Unexpected Points. I am your host, Kevin Cole. We're going to go through the Week 16 weekend slate, a lot of blowouts, some important games to go over, all of my unadjusted scores, and of course, the insightful commentary of everyone's favorite data scientist, Ben Brown. Let's get to it. Ben, thank you for joining me again. We are both in new locations here. I on vacation. You have relocated from the isolation cell that you were in before. You must have been good to your captors, and you got a nice couch there to sit down on before. You performed well, and you've made it out of isolation. So congratulations to you on that front.
Thank you. Yeah, big step for me in Week 16. Thankfully, I moved out of my own basement now into my parents' basement. Some people would say it's a step back. I only like to think of it as a step forward. So we'll see where I end up here in Week 17. Maybe I'm in an entirely new location, like Guantanamo Bay or something like that here. Visiting you down in Florida, I don't know for sure. So
maybe, yeah. Well, you know what? They've probably been trailing you on your undefeated picks.
Right.
And so some of that is filtering back to you. So, okay. So everyone, we're going to get into all of the Week 16 action. Luckily, there's some blowouts and unimportant games we can flow by because we don't have the bye weeks to help us anymore here. But we're going to start with Monday Night Football. But before we start, I want to make sure everyone understands the premise of what we're going to do here. We're going to discuss the games, give some of the up top parameters as far as the spread and totals for games that are important for what the total was, and then go through the actual score and my adjusted score, which gives a little bit more credit for success rate. So something that's a little bit more sustainable. Teams are more sustainably successful versus the outlier plays. It's going to downweight special teams. It's going to give credit to teams that a little bit more credit to teams that have more turnovers than they actually have turnover-worthy plays because of tips, other things like that, drops, and then vice versa. If the team is throwing a lot of dropped interceptions, then we're going to weight them a little bit more harshly than we would normally. So let's talk about Miami, New Orleans. It falls into the category of bad game and game that has interesting playoff implications. Let's talk first, though, about the fact that this was a 3-point spread for Miami, a 37 total. So it's 20-3 Miami. So well under still the 37 there, obviously crushing the 3 points that Miami was favored by. My adjusted scores had it 21-8. So a little bit more narrow, but easily under the total, easily over the 3 points that Miami needed to cover on this one. So the first thing I want to cover is the fact that with these weird things happening, the Saints are missing 20 players. They're on their fourth quarterback here. Are we unable, especially nerds and bookmakers and others who are using past historical information to set these lines, is it just irrelevant in these circumstances, or was this an outlier type of game that we shouldn't weight going forward?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's completely irrelevant, but I do think when you are kind of regressing to the market expectation, there's going to be these games where you just completely miss on, and maybe it is worthwhile to say that this is a complete outlier game. Like you said, fourth string quarterback for the New Orleans Saints, Ian Book, probably the lowest total of a primetime game here in 2021. I'm thinking back to when the Bills and Patriots played in that snowpocalypse game. That game closed at a 39-point total, so 2 points lower than that even, and it still wasn't enough, right? And I think if you were kind of looking at it before the game, you would say, well, Ian Book, maybe he's successful, or maybe he allows, a few big plays to the Miami Dolphins defense, things like a pick six or something, to kind of have them on track to at least go over what is a really, really low total. And that happened, and we still didn't even come close to this total. So I agree with you in there's certain situations that there's going to be games here in 2021, probably due to COVID, that are just completely not like anything we've seen prior history, even in 2020, definitely in years previous to that. So it makes it difficult to bet with a model in these types of situations, again, especially when you are kind of regressing to the mean. So I think you need to take the model outputs with a grain of salt when you're kind of evaluating some of these games that are just like completely off based on what we have as far as like team power rankings and those sorts of things, and even individual power rankings when you're kind of trying to adjust for the replacement level value of players filling in at those positions. So it's tough from a modeling perspective. Sometimes you just need to side with the market and pound teams like the Dolphins, pound like the under, and just be happy with those results when they actually come in.
Yeah. And then For the particulars of this game, I mean, Tua didn't play great. I guess he wasn't maybe as bad as some of the perception would have been on there. Right. He had an ugly interception, but it was only a negative 1.5 expected points because it was on 3rd and 9, and he threw it 30 yards downfield, although it looked really bad. He had another very, very bad sack, which extended a field goal that they ended up missing at the end of the first half. 50-something passing grade for us. And what's weird about Ian Book in this one is he actually had a 50-something passing grade also, right, despite the fact that his EPA per play was the 4th worst on the entire season. He took 8 sacks in this one. So he was getting killed as far as that's concerned. Going forward with these teams, Dolphins are 20-25% chance to make the playoffs here. The Saints are actually still up in the 30 to 35% range. What do you think about either of these teams as far as playoff possibility? What do we want these teams to make the playoffs?
No.
I think the Saints could be interesting. The Saints beat the Bucs twice. Okay, right, with when they actually have players. So I think they could be a little bit interesting. Miami, you just don't know what to do with them when you read off the quarterbacks that they've been facing, where Ian Book might not even be the worst quarterback that they faced over this winning streak.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I don't want to see either one of these teams in the playoffs. Definitely don't want to see the New Orleans Saints. I do think, like you said, it is interesting. They did beat the Buccaneers twice, but there's not a team that I think can really compete with the upper teams in the NFC when they're actually playing at their best. Teams like the Cowboys, Packers, even Bucs. They did beat them, of course, but I think that's more of an outlier performance based on some expectations of how well their defense actually played in those two matchups. So no, I don't really want to see it. I do think the Dolphins could potentially run the table here. Tennessee this weekend, and then they face New England at home next week, and they obviously need to win out in order to get into the playoffs. Maybe they keep their hot streak alive, but much better quarterback play on the opposite side of the field than what they've had for the previous 7 wins, basically. So I don't expect to see either one of these teams in the playoffs. I'm ready to call it quits on both their seasons here in 2021.
Yeah. I mean, you're going to be tired of hearing this trope over the course of the next couple of weeks, but it's true for the Dolphins that the playoffs really start next week for them. They're going to play, you mentioned, the Titans, the Patriots. If they win those games, I believe, I've checked all my calculations here, but I believe they're 100% in the playoffs if they win both of those games. So that's really what their playoff probability is based on, whether or not they can win both of those games. So they're basically going to need to ride this out plus another 3 victories to get to the Super Bowl here, because we all want to see the Dolphins in the Super Bowl, of course, this year with Tua, and then that will also prove that Tua was the correct pick over Justin Herbert, I believe. If they just by QB wins, if they can end up getting into the playoffs this year. All right, let's go back to Saturday. Way back to Saturday. Cleveland Browns, Green Bay Packers. Packers 7.5-point favorites, win by 2 points, 4 points better according to my numbers here. First off, are we worried about the Packers at all after this? People seem to write this off as, the Packers know how to win. Well, they punted a few times at the end of this game and gave the Browns a chance to win after the Browns turned over the ball and Baker Mayfield was in the giving mood 4 times during this game.
Right, definitely. I don't think you're going to get much worse of a performance from Baker Mayfield's perspective for the Green Bay Packers. So I think it is a little bit concerning, right? Obviously, like you said, they punted, kind of not necessarily punted the game away, but definitely gave the Browns the opportunity to win this one on more than just 1 or 2 drives. I think that's concerning. Similar thing to last week. They almost had Tyler Huntley beat them in Baltimore. If they would have scored that 2-point conversion, kind of let them get back into the game as well. So they've started off hot and then just haven't been able to bury teams. I do think when they're actually playing a team that is similar, in skill set to them in the playoffs, I'm going to be concerned about it because they just haven't necessarily put teams away like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have, maybe even to a lesser extent the Dallas Cowboys have. So they are sitting, with tied for like the best odds with the Kansas City Chiefs to win the Super Bowl this year. But I do think their path to getting back in or to getting to the Super Bowl is really difficult. And I don't necessarily think they're probably valued correctly in the betting market where they actually should be right now based on their previous couple game performances. So
yeah. When we turn to the Browns, Stefanski is catching some heat because of the play calling here. And the Browns were highly, highly, highly successful running the ball. They had a success rate on their designed runs over 60% versus 45% when dropping back to pass. They were averaging about 0.5 point per play on design runs, which is almost 100th percentile type of outcome. for a game versus losing 3/4 of a point with all those interceptions and sacks that Baker Mayfield was taking on the other end. So is this on our radar at all? The fact that Stefanski's getting pummeled a bit for especially passing the last 3 games, the last 3 plays of the season of that particular game. Is it on our radar? Or are we not questioning what's going on here?
I don't want to question it too much from Stefanski's side of things, because looking back on it, like, the Packers had everything break right for them, and the Browns were still right there in order to win this football game. So something I would say is off more so from the Packers side than Kevin Stefanski's side. I do think, his ability to at least coach them through a lot of mistakes, 5 sacks for Baker Mayfield, 4 interceptions, and they still had a chance to beat what many believe is the best team in the NFC right now. So I'm not really going to knock Stefanski too much for that sort of situation. Obviously, there's some time constraints happening as well. Would you have liked to see him run the football on one of those 3 downs? Sure, maybe, but we're not necessarily going to, hammer our boy Stefanski here, especially from, an analytics perspective on play calling situations, which is just something I know you don't necessarily want to get too heavily involved in here right now. So
yeah, I don't. Although I will say, watching that game, I had a similar feeling to what some others had. Now, the Browns could maybe turn things around. I mean, they've been a bit unlucky here with all the different things that have happened to them. Not having to play the Nick Mullins game, barely losing this game, despite having. I think they have a pretty good team. Like, as far as the strength of the team is concerned, internally, when they have their pieces, there's maybe a better chance than you might think for them to make the playoffs. I'm not sure if it's more than 20%-ish to make the playoffs, but they have the Steelers and the Bengals to finish the season. So if they can win out, they need other things to happen, but it's not the most unlikely other things to happen. The first thing they need to happen is they need the Bengals to lose to the Kansas City Chiefs next week. So I think that's, not 100% of the time that's going to happen, but that's probable, I will say. The second thing that they need to happen is for the Ravens to lose one of their next 2 games. And the Ravens are playing the Steelers in week 18, so they'll probably be healthy by then. Maybe that doesn't happen, but they're playing the Rams next week. So, that's not the most unlikely scenario outside of the fact that the Browns do need to win these next 2 games, which includes beating a Bengals team that's playing pretty well. So it's perhaps they can get the narrative flipped around here if those things end up happening.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with you. I do think, they've kind of had the deck stacked against them for a while. Have they performed completely up to expectation? No, but I do think, players 2 through 53 on this roster are probably are maybe the best in the NFL. So if Baker can kind of get things right, I do think that they are kind of a dangerous out here toward the end of the season, and if they get into that AFC playoff race. So
yeah, and I think for the Packers' concern, again, this type of outcome is going to be a little bit of a negative for me as far as the team strength is concerned. Not hugely negative, but a little bit of a negative team strength. But the win gives them better and better chances of getting that number 1 seed, which would then obviously help substantially for them getting to the Super Bowl. And we have the Vikings on course for Sunday Night Football, where Aaron Rodgers could definitely seal the MVP race, which it looks like he's on. I mean, I'm surprised the odds are even more far in his favor right now, because Brady has fallen out of people's consciousness, at least, despite the fact that he's played okay the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, at this stage, Aaron Rodgers is competing against Cooper Kupp and Jonathan Taylor, it sounds like, for the MVP discussion, which he should definitely be head and shoulders above the rest. Maybe if Tom Brady kind of shows out here a little bit more with, the lack of receiving core that he has in place right now, maybe that's the reason why he could potentially get back into the race. But I agree with you. It sounds like, Joe Throgan basically is going to be the 2021 MVP when it's all said and done. So
yeah. Rodgers, if they win, if they get that first seed, I think it's pretty much wrapped up. Okay.
Right.
The other Saturday game, the Colts at the Arizona Cardinals. Colts were 3-point underdogs. Arizona favored by 3. Ends up being 22-16. Colts win. I had it more of being an even game, primarily because the success rate was fairly low for the Colts. They ran it a bunch, but with 4 replacement offensive linemen, they only had an 18% success rate. Their EPA per play was very low. Despite the optics of Taylor having another 100-yard game, he basically ripped off one big run on first down, so it wasn't hugely valuable to start the game. And then the rest of the game, he averaged something like 2 yards per carry and was not helping them convert first downs at all. Negative 16 yards before contact in this game. So just really, really ugly numbers there for that offensive line. And the Cardinals, who Austin Gale, friend of the pod, fellow PFFer, has labeled the Fraudnals, which I'm stealing, and I'm gonna talk about them.
You're running with it.
Yeah, I should just claim it as my own, but I'm going to give credit to him on the Fraudnals. I'm surprised no one else has come up with that, quite honestly. The question about them now is they're in a tailspin. They probably only have a quarter chance, roughly, of winning their division now with the Rams surging. So how do we feel about the Fraudnals? Are they the Fraudnals? And then on the Colts side, are they truly the most dangerous team on the planet as they've been labeled by the football media complex?
Yeah, I definitely think the Fraudnals are an apt title for them. I think if you don't steal it, I'm going to be definitely stealing that one because I do think it fits.
Where do we rank them in the NFC? Where do we rank them in the NFC? So we have the Bucs and let's say the Packers at the top.
I would say Bucs and Packers. I do think the Cowboys are definitely above them as well. Not even really close right now. I do think the Rams are probably ahead of them from my perspective still. I just think, the Rams are a much better team than what the Cardinals have shown here. I do think people are probably still trying to give them credit for, the injury situations and them being able to handle that pretty well. I don't necessarily buy into that a whole lot. So I think that I would have them. Yeah.
So you'd have them a tier below these teams, right? So
I definitely have them a tier below the Packers, Buccaneers, Cowboys, and Rams, right? And I do think that they're probably, so they're, the fifth team, I would say, probably in the NFC right now. That's kind of where I have them.
Yeah, I think it's fair. I think what I would do is I would say, between them and the 49ers, I don't know. That's kind of like almost a coin flip at this point. So right. I think they're kind of in that tier with the 49ers beyond those more elite teams.
Yeah, definitely. I think the teams that kind of get into, the NFC wildcard race, 49ers, maybe the Eagles, like I'm not really putting the Cardinals all that much ahead of either one of those two teams either, right? I do think if the Saints get in, I would have the Cardinals ahead of the Saints, but they're not a team that I think is really going to win a playoff game here in 2021.
How about the Colts? Because we saw some of this Carson Wentz 2017 magic in this game. Those final few drives, but two drives
third quarter.
Third quarter, yeah. So he ended up going 6 of 8, 123 yards, a touchdown, 4 first down conversions on those drives. And this was him. This was not being carried by Jonathan Taylor. Taylor in those 2 drives that were really the scoring drives for them had 7 carries for 13 yards, did not convert anything on first down. The problem I see is maybe if they had a bye and you could say they need 2 wins and then the Super Bowl, they'd have a chance of getting this Carson Wentz ceiling performance for that many weeks, but they need to close out the season. They need to, win the 3 games. Multiple games are going to be on the road there for them, and then have a chance to go to the Super Bowl. It seems like a little too much for this version of Carson Wentz because you're rolling the dice that you're not going to get the version that we saw against the Patriots, where they won that game, but you're not going to win games like that in the playoffs very often, where you have a guy who throws 12 pass attempts and 3 of them are turnover-worthy plays.
Right. Yeah, definitely. I agree with you. I do think this was probably the game we did need to see from Carson Wentz to at least somewhat buy into the narrative of the Colts being a little bit of a dangerous team. But I do think that narrative is built on the fact that they could potentially go into some of these cold weather environments like New England, like Buffalo, like Kansas City, and win like a snowpocalypse type of game, right? They obviously are built for that mentality. They have, the interior offensive line do have the capabilities to run the football probably better than anybody else in the NFL right now. So could they win those games? Yeah, they definitely could. But if they're relying on Carson Wentz, to lead them, to be really highly efficient, kind of like he was during stretches here on Saturday night, but I don't think he's necessarily put in a complete performance here in 2021, where I would say this is the Carson Wentz Colts need in order to get through the AFC and potentially get into the Super Bowl. I have not seen that yet. This was maybe one of the closer games that he's had here in 2021 in getting to that point, but it's still not enough from my perspective. So we'll see. I don't think the Colts are as good as what the NFL media wants them to be right now. Part of that is the running narrative. Part of that is, a lot of things need to break right for them in order to actually be successful in the playoffs. Maybe that's going to happen. But I just think the deck is probably stacked too much against them, mainly because of Carson Wentz, for why they're not going to actually live up to all the hype that they have right now.
Yeah. I think if you're not getting if your defense is not at the level of, I don't know, with like the Ravens squad when they won back in, 2001 or something like that,
Dilfer,
or the Bucs when they won against the Raiders in the Super Bowl, or one of those sorts of defenses where you're going to need the quarterback more and more in the NFL to win you one game, at least during the playoff run against another team that has an offense that's going to score a lot. I think it's kind of like what Josh Allen did a bit in this Patriots game. It's just like won them the game. Now, can Carson Wentz do that? It's still a little bit questionable for me. He did give you something here because he got nothing basically from the running game, and they ended up winning the game on his arm. At the same time, he wasn't pressured enough from Arizona with their ability to score. I mean, Arizona had 13 points basically until the very end of the game where they kicked the field goal. So he wasn't really pressured to win in the shootout here. And that's when, if he starts pressing, the things will get a little bit interesting for the Colts. Okay, before we get into the rest of the games for Sunday, I just want to quickly mention, if you want to get an Elite subscription, Elite Up is the promo code here. That's ELITEUP, 50% off. 50% off. This is the best deal you're going to get to be able to get an Elite subscription. That's our number one top high end of the line subscription. You get all of the betting content, all of the locked article content, all of the grading, props tool, everything else that we have available here. And we also want to hear from you a little bit on what sort of features you'd like us to add to our top Elite subscription. If you want to email us at contact@pff.com, let us know all those different things, and we can start to implement a lot of those features. All right, let's get to some of the Sunday action here. We're going to start with some easy games to get through. First, Lions at Atlanta Falcons. Falcons were 7.5-point favorite. The win by 4 points, 20-16. My adjusted score at 24-18, so a little bit wider, but about the same here. And I also had Detroit plus 7.5 as a bet that I liked, so that ended up luckily hitting there. I don't think we need to get into this too much. The Falcons still have a 2, 3, 4% chance of making the playoffs, which is too high for my liking, being that this is the last thing I want to see is the Falcons making the playoffs here. Do we have anything to talk about here other than Dan Campbell coming through, taking care of the bettors here by kicking that field goal at the end of the game to make sure they got their cover?
No, not much else. I mean, Dan Campbell, all it does is cover basically. So definitely love him from a betting perspective. Detroit seems to love him from a coaching perspective, and we'll see when the shoe is on the other side when Detroit, if Detroit builds up to the point where they are not necessarily an underdog in every single game. It'll be interesting to see if there is like a coaching philosophy shift with Dan Campbell in Detroit, but we're still probably a few years out from that, so we'll see. I'm just going to continue to ride the gravy train that is Dan Campbell against the spread here in 2020.
Yeah, I would love for Dan Campbell. There's Lombardi in Green Bay. There's like Tom Landry. There's Bill Walsh out in San Francisco. There's Bill Belichick for the New England Patriots. And then Detroit Lions in the future. We're looking back at the Dan Campbell. Dan Campbell.
Right. Build the statue, the
right? Of coaches. Being that he's starting with that kneecap speech, which, quickly got a little bit old on the jokes there. But going to what he's done now, where so many people are rooting for him now. He may be the most popular coach in the NFL as far as people really rooting for him at this point. So I'm glad to see him cover again. Not hurt their draft pick status too much, but again, respectability and have that team playing well. I love it.
Right.
Okay, Bucs at Cardinals. The Bucs finishing off a pretty easy stretcher to the season. They're 11-point favorites. They win 32-6. 30-11 was my adjusted score on here. So a little bit more narrow just because, 32-6 is a pretty wide margin. Before we get into Rule, the Panthers, their continued implosion, which I don't know if we need to talk about it too much, but we have this 2-quarterback thing going on. I was predicting weeks ago, by the way, when Newton started to struggle, I said, we're going to see Sam Darnold again this season.
Right.
I just knew they're on the hook for $19 million for him next year, and you have to at least give him a chance to do something because they're not necessarily going to be in position to upgrade at the quarterback. Let's talk the team that actually matters here first, which is the Bucs. Without Evans, without Godwin, without playoff Lenny, they win very easily. Brady has an 87.5 grade, 3 EPA per play. And the Panthers defense, while they're kind of a joke on offense, they're not awful on defense. They've been up and down, but still third success rate, but opponent success rate as far as the lowest success rate. They're 7th in EPA per play. Antonio Brown was enough for Brady to get by here. So are we starting to undervalue Brady, who's falling further and further in the MVP standings despite a good performance like this? Are we starting to undervalue him, undervalue the Bucs, maybe undervalue their status as potentially the number one team in the NFL, which I still think they are, even though they don't have Godwin going forward? I don't know. I still think they are.
Yeah, I think people are probably overstating or overvaluing the impact of those injuries. Obviously, they do matter. Are they going to matter to the point where they derail, the Buccaneers season? I would say no, because they do still have Tom Brady, right? And maybe his MVP candidacy isn't going to live up to a guy like Aaron Rodgers toward the end of the season, when they basically beat up on the Panthers. Jets and Panthers don't really have any signature victories or anything like that in prime time in the end of the season. I think that's the main reason why Brady won't end up recatching up to Aaron Rodgers and potentially win the MVP candidacy. But I do think the Buccaneers, kind of like you said, maybe a little bit undervalued, at least in the public perception, more so than betting market. I do still think betting market has them as basically, the third most likely team to win the Super Bowl. I feel like that's kind of accurate, but I do think there is a little bit of injury overbaked into their current expectation. I think that, with Tom Brady still at quarterback, they're still the team to beat in the NFL right now.
Yeah, I mean, the right now they're also in this situation where they're pretty much out on the bye week. Now it's between the Cowboys and the Packers. So that really hurts their Super Bowl chances, not getting that free week off. And there's no way they're almost completely locked into the division, minus losing both of these games to the Jets and the Panthers again going forward, and a bunch of other things happening. So, they can throttle off, I think, here for the rest of the season too. And for them, as weird as it might be to say, avoiding the Saints in the playoffs, somehow facing the Saints in the playoffs may be the one thing that they really need, because that is Brady's kryptonite, proven on pretty much all 5 times that he's played against them. But really 4 out of the 5 times he's played against him, he's had some of the 4 worst performances that he's had on the Bucs at all. So he's also praying. He's praying along with us that the Saints do not make the playoffs for different reasons. We're more like for watchability. So he doesn't have to face that defense again.
Right, definitely. Yeah, I do think the rest of the NFC is probably praying that they do get in, so that they don't have to deal with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Because I do think, like, the Packers much rather would play the Saints at home than the Buccaneers probably to get to the Super Bowl. So we'll see how it breaks out. I still don't think the Saints are getting in, thankfully, for the rest of our viewing pleasure. But we'll see how it ends up breaking out here. So
okay, well let's talk about another team that is looking less and less like they're getting in here, and that is the Minnesota Vikings. So the Vikings were at home to the LA Rams. They end up losing this game as a 3-point underdog. They lose 30-23, a little bit closer than you might have thought. My adjusted score is 25-19 for the Rams, so down a little bit on both. Just a mistake-filled game. If you look at the list of most impactful plays, so kind of the absolute value of the change in expected points on the plays, the top 5 most impactful plays were Stafford interception, Rams punt return touchdown, which I kind of put that as a mistake on the punt return, on the punt coverage team. Cousins interception, Stafford interception, Stafford interception. Just giving the ball back and forth on this one. And it was kind of weird because I feel like Stafford didn't really catch a lot of heat in people's minds for how poorly he played in this game, giving it away, almost giving away the game total.
Right.
If anything, we have this weird like team based sentiment, which then carries over to the quarterback, for the fact that the Cardinals are falling off a cliff and the Rams are maybe ascending to be the division title winner. In some ways, people are cutting Stafford a bunch of slack for a pretty nasty game here against the Vikings.
Yeah, I mean, it was nasty, right? I do think, 2 teams that didn't necessarily want to win the game, and it was ugly, right? 3 interceptions from Stafford, no deep pass attempts that were completed, only 3 explosive plays, mainly due to, yards after the catch from Cooper Kupp. So just not a great performance from either team. Thankfully, the Vikings are all but dead and buried in their playoff hunt right now. And I think, maybe the expectation that the Rams are in that upper echelon of NFC teams maybe just needs to be a little bit reevaluated here, because I do think they are probably a tier below, even though I said it earlier, I do think they are a tier below the Cowboys, Buccaneers, and Packers in the NFC pecking order right now.
No, I think you're right. I think the main reason is kind of the Stafford question, quite honestly, here is they're not going to get a bye. They're going to have to win 3 games to get in.
They have the toughest matchup in the wild card race, or in the wild card round that weekend, as well as the 4th seed for sure. So
yeah. So they're going to have to win those games. And I think earlier this season, maybe I would have had less question about their ability to do that. But now that we've seen the Stafford down games, including a game like this is a game where he cannot do this if he wants to win a playoff game. it's just going to be tough. You're going to really have to get a great, flip of the coin, roll of the dice, however you want to put it. Because he's not like a coin toss, but he's more like, let's say, 60, 15% of the time, 20% of the time, you're going to get a stinker from him. The probability that happens over the course of 3 games is higher now because we've seen it happen substantially over these last few games. Vikings. I've gone back and forth on whether we actually want to see these guys in the playoffs or not. They pretty much have to win that game that we talked about against Green Bay. It would be pretty sweet for them to win that game, put themselves in playoff position, maybe derail Aaron Rodgers' MVP. That would really shake up the MVP conversation on that one too. Maybe put Jonathan Taylor in position to win the MVP with a dominant defensive performance here. So I think I'd want to see that in some ways, just because I know people think that all of our analytics guys will be at home crying with John Taylor wins MVP, but I think that would, in some ways, that's like job security for us, is when everyone else is messing up so badly and giving it to the wrong people.
Yeah, definitely. I don't think that it's going to happen because of the Minnesota Vikings. I think
you're a Vikings fan, though,
right? I know for a fact if you think Aaron Rodgers owns the Chicago Bears, he owns the Vikings even more so in those situations. So it's not going to happen. Not in prime time. Not on Sunday night. Not in Lambeau Field. I'm willing to eat my words, but I would bet the house.
Zimmer coaching for his job. Right. Zimmer coaching for his job potentially too. I know some people have posited that maybe he doesn't want that job anymore. He's old, okay, and he's
got a supermodel girlfriend though, so
that's true. Yeah, well, more time at home. He's the first person I'd ever believe who says he wants to spend more time with his at home with his family, when that's normally all just a lie, and they all take another job like a week later when they say that. But does he really want to be defensive coordinator somewhere else? And I don't think so. I feel like his chances of getting another head coaching job have steadily decreased over the years. People talked to him about as a potential Cowboys coach a couple of years ago. Now that's obviously off the table and other things. So I think he wants to keep this job. So it could also be that. That's also another thing here. We'll see what Zimmer is cooking up for Aaron Rodgers. Hasn't worked so well in the past, but maybe he can get something going this time. All right. So we got, I think, maybe the biggest game of the weekend was the Buffalo Bills at the New England Patriots, primarily because the Bills, in my opinion, are probably like the difference between how good the team is and where their playoff chances were coming into the week was the biggest separation for me. I feel like the Bills, you could say they're by some measures, you could say they're the second best team in the NFL. They're the third best team in the NFL. Yet they were, like a third chance of not making the playoffs before this game happened. Even now, they're not definitively in. So the Patriots were a 1-point favorite in this game. It fluctuated between, 2.5 and 1 here. The Bills win 33-21. And my adjusted score is 30-23. So it's a little bit closer. I thought it would be a little bit more wide for the fact that Buffalo did not take advantage on some other drives where they had where they could have scored in the end zone. But they did take advantage on other fourth downs. This was a fourth down palooza, including Bill Belichick in this one, going for it a bunch of times. 5 for 6 on fourth down were the Patriots. Believe it or not, 6 fourth down attempts here. And this was the game that I talked about versus Carson Wentz, where Josh Allen just won this game for the team. They did run the ball pretty well. So everyone wants to say the Bills can't run the ball. The Bills need to be able to run the ball. You need to be able to blah, blah, blah. They still passed at 15% over expectation and were that good passing the ball. Josh Allen, 91 grade, 0.36 EPA per play. Huge drive at the end of the game, fourth down pickup to push them going forward. What is your takeaway from this game? Because I'm a little bit surprised by how people are just pushing others out of the way to be the first to jump off of the Patriots bandwagon after this one.
Yeah, I was never on the Patriots bandwagon, so I'm glad I'm not on that train anymore. But I do think it was the game that we really wanted to see from the Buffalo Bills, and to a lesser extent, Josh Allen basically putting the team on his back, playing really well. They did do everything that people probably asked them to do, right? To get the running game involved a little bit, really high adjusted completion percentage. I think Josh Allen was basically at 80% with 3 drop passes. So really good performance, handled pressure really well. I think they had, pressure upwards of 20 on 20 dropbacks, 0 sacks taken. So his ability to extend plays, break out of the pocket, be able to pick up a positive, expected value play with his legs and some of those drop back situations makes the Buffalo Bills a really dangerous team. Obviously, they had some COVID situations playing out at the wide receiver position. That really didn't matter. Isaiah McKenzie basically slots in really well, has a really high quality game, high yards after the catch situation. So I think it was a great performance from the Bills, kind of what we expected from the Patriots a little bit. And I think, this is definitely how the pecking order is probably breaking out behind the Chiefs in the AFC right now.
Okay, so let's also talk Mac Jones. 50 basically grade in this game. And if we look at his last 4 games, passing grades in the last 4 games, 53 against the Titans, 45 against the Bills. Now, mind you, he threw the ball 3 times in that game. But again, that's not great. Like, it's not a great statement either way if you only throw the ball 3 times as far as how good of a quarterback you are. 61 grade against the Colts, now a 46 grade here against the Bills. There, people jumping off of the Patriots bandwagon, people jumping off of the Mac Jones Offensive Rookie of the Year bandwagon might even be more of a of a fight to get off of that one here. Let me look up the current odds here. Actually, I don't even see Rookie of the Year because that's kind of annoying that they don't have it up here at DK. But what do you think about Jones generally, Offensive Rookie of the Year, all that stuff?
I think he was overvalued basically to start early on. I don't necessarily buy into him a whole lot as being, as good as what everyone projected as the best starting quarterback. Obviously, he's shown that in a number of games here in 2021, but I don't think he is going to live up to that long term. So I don't know. The problem is who else are you going to give it to if it's not Mac Jones, right? Like, is Jamar Chase fallen off enough to the point where he can still win Offensive Rookie of the Year? Is it someone else? I mean, there just hasn't been a ton of clear separation from any one rookie player in order to actually probably justify getting the Offensive Rookie of the Year award, even over a Mac Jones season that I think was kind of relatively when we look at it at the end of the season. So.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at Mac, he's still minus 500-ish sort of on this. So still the clear favorite. I mean, Jamar Chase is next at plus 350. I mean, the thing that was weird about Chase is I think you could still make the argument for Chase. I mean, I know that T. Higgins has become the guy here, but Chase is one of these flip the season discussions, right? Like, if you flipped the season around, I think he would be leading the MVP. The Offensive Rookie of the Year voting if he started off slow and T. Higgins was the man early in the season, and then it flipped around to him having this dominant efficiency and everything else in the second half of the season, which he did in the first half of the season, because he's still up there. He's still like top 10-ish sort of receiver. I just think it's tough when you're just rewarding mediocrity at the quarterback position because it's the quarterback in a way. So in that reason, I'd like to go with another position. Now, the people who want to go galaxy brain and go Creed Humphrey or someone like that, maybe you could do something like that. I think I'd be more comfortable with Rashawn Slater or someone else who is who's playing a little bit of a more valuable position. But so Rashawn Slater, I could say, or Jamar Chase. I think I like those better than Mac Jones, but it makes it, the quarterback is going to get the award a lot of the times. But if they falter the rest of the season, that could also flip around more quickly than some people think.
Yeah, definitely.
And speaking of little Betty bets, if you want to place here, DraftKings is the sponsor of the pod. With the NFL season winding down, the playoffs will be here before you know it. And at DraftKings Sportsbook, the official sports betting partner of the NFL, the offers are getting even more amazing. New customers can bet just $5 on any NFL team to win their game. And if they do, you win $200 in free bets. Don't miss out on this action. If the sportsbook isn't available in your state, you can still be part of the NFL action. Anyone can play for huge cash prizes and daily fantasy contests. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use promo code PFF. Bet just $5 on any NFL team and win $200 in free bets if they're victorious. That's promo code PFF this week at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. Must be 21 or older. New Jersey, Indiana, or Pennsylvania only. New customers only. Minimum $5 deposit and $1 wagered. One per customer. Restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Okay, let's get into a quick one here. The battle of the number 1 and number 2 picks. Jacksonville at the New York Jets. 26-21 New York Jets. My adjusted score, 27-20 Jacksonville. So flip it around in the other direction here. And just explain that first. The main reason why is we had a kick return touchdown for the Jets, which is about a 5.5 EPA play. And the success rate was still better for Jacksonville than it was for the Jets. A big thing for the Jets was Zach Wilson, the 50-something yard run, 5.6 EPA on that. Great run, great play. Not going to see it too often. Not going to see that happen too often. And then outside of that, Wilson shockingly had an 80 grade in this game. I'm not sure how, but he dropped back only 44% of the time, 10% under expectation, only 102 passing yards on 22 attempts, so 4.6 yards per attempt. So not so hot here. Anything you want to say about this game? Any implications, or is it just a couple of meh performances from these top picks, and we need to just move on to 2022 to figure out anything about either of these teams?
Yeah, I think we need to move on to 2022 to figure out anything about these teams. I mean, obviously, it was nice to see Zach Wilson show a little semblance of offensive production at the quarterback position, but yeah, there's still a long road ahead for both these guys to actually be where we expected them to be kind of heading into 2021. So reset year, gap year, whatever you want to call it, but maybe we'll see how these guys perform here in 2022.
Yeah, I mean, I think Wilson has, better athleticism and arm than Darnold did, but it was a little bit reminiscent of like a big Darnold run that would happen, and people get excited, and then we continue to think again. And we're still on, weeks since Trevor Lawrence TD watch. The Trevor Lawrence TD watch here. We're still on it. No touchdown pass in this game. That's now one touchdown pass in the last 8 games. So they went on by after week 8, and after that, 1 touchdown pass that entire stretch here, which is pretty incredible, almost shocking how you could continue to do that. Very strange sequence to end this game too, where they spike the ball on 3rd down before trying to score and then failing on 4th down. So just a lot of weirdness going on there. Hopefully they can find a coach in Jacksonville, but now they're going to retain Trent Baalke. I don't know. I'll have to talk about this more in the offseason, but yeah, it looks like a total disaster going on there. Shad Khan, sweet mustache, not so great on some of these decision makings, it seems like from the ownership position. Okay. Giants at Philadelphia Eagles. The Eagles, the Fighting Jake Froms were 11-point underdogs in this game. The Eagles win 34-10. But my adjusted score, much, much more narrow, 18-6 for Philadelphia, because the Eagles offense, there's some rough sledding for this Eagles offense. And I feel like this is another one of these games where after this game, remember, I love Jalen Hurts. I'm driving the bandwagon, right? But after this game, again, they are moving up in the playoff standings. They win this game. Optically, if you just look at the final score, they win by 24 points. The Eagles started this game. Their first 4 drives, all punts, 15 total plays on those 4 drives, 22 total yards was all that they put up on the first 4 drives of the game. So it helps when you're going against the Fighting Froms here, because he put up, like the worst performance in the history of mankind almost in this game for fraud. Wait a second. I gotta pull this up really quick. Well, first of all, let me get you have any takes on the Eagles on this one, whether they could be a little bit overvalued, because their success rate keeps on being low, and especially their success rate dropping back to pass keeps on being low. Right.
Yeah, I mean, it is somewhat concerning. I do think, I don't know. I honestly didn't watch this game a whole lot. I was interested to see if the Eagles are actually going to cover. They did. Obviously, some turnover luck in the 3rd and 4th quarter played into that quite a bit, but they're a tough team to evaluate. I do think if, the Cowboys are playing for anything in week 18, if they do still have a shot at that number 1 seed, it's going to be, difficult for Philadelphia to kind of squeeze into, the last playoff spot in the NFC. Obviously, they need to win this week against Washington in order to do that. I think they handle business, and then it's going to come down to if Dallas is resting their starters or not in week 18 on whether or not the Eagles actually end up getting in. So I don't know. I'm with you. You might have been driving the Jalen Hurts bandwagon to start. I think I hopped on board at least early enough, riding shotgun for a while. And I think he does offer maybe the best rookie quarterback contract situation based on production in the NFL so far in 2021. I do think obviously there's guys like Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert, higher draft picks, more cap hit in the NFL. So I do think the Eagles are set up really well for long-term success if they end up building around Jalen Hurts, which they absolutely have to do, in my opinion, here going forward.
Yeah. I mean, so if you look at this game, like the Eagles, 37% success rate, 63% on runs, only 30% on dropbacks. So I'm seeing that a little bit too often. I mean, he does give you big plays and he throws the ball fairly well down the field. So that's going to skew a little bit higher, and it gives you the floor with the running game. How much credit do we give to him for the running game versus the fact that they have good offensive linemen and so on? We'll see there. But so the thing you're talking about Hurts going forward, is he the guy or not? You don't want to have this discussion necessarily on a week by week basis, but the thing that's interesting, I think what might be helping him even more than his play, and number one, the playoff chances is the biggest thing. Like they make the playoffs, that really helps him a lot. But number two is that their picks, which have gone from 3 top 11 picks when the Dolphins and the Colts were struggling a lot.
Right.
And they were struggling a little bit. 3 top 11 picks. The Dolphins pick was like borderline top 5-ish sort of pick. Now, Colts have been on a run. Dolphins have been on a run. They've been on a run. Now, as of right now, their picks are, I believe, 18, 19, and 23. So they're back half picks. So if they want to look at drafting a quarterback, if they say we want to get whoever the number 1 quarterback is in the draft, I don't know who it is. I'm not paying attention. I don't know where they're going to go, but they're probably going to go before the 18th pick. So to secure that, you might need to throw in an extra. You might need to use 2 first-round picks on this guy rather than using 1. And it becomes a little bit more of a dicey proposition in a year where people don't love quarterbacks, and you may want to have that draft capital spent elsewhere. So I think these outside circumstances where their draft picks are going to be is playing in Jalen Hurts' favor of being the 2022 starter for this team.
Yeah. It is exactly up, right? I mean, moving down in the draft, I do think there are still some opportunities in like the 10 through 13 range for some quarterback positions. Obviously, Sam Howell is a guy people like. Malik Willis as well. Maybe those are 2 options but I don't really think either of those put the Eagles in a better short or long-term position than what they're going to get at Jalen Hurts at quarterback, especially if they end up using some of those picks to potentially get him one more wide receiver outside of Devontae Smith, which I think they absolutely have to do here. So I'm excited for the Eagles' future. I do think with Jalen Hurts at quarterback, they can be, a team that competes with the Dallas Cowboys in the NFC East for the foreseeable future for sure. So
yeah, I think so. If he can, especially keep that offensive line
intact,
run blocking, then it doesn't really matter who they have back there in the backfield. Okay, Baltimore Ravens, the Fighting Josh Johnsons in this one at Cincinnati Bengals. Bengals 7-point favorites, 41-21 victory. Much more narrow, actually, believe it or not here. I only have it at 27-21. That's because the Bengals became the big play Bengals again. What was interesting about them is they did turn things over to Burrow. 71% dropback percentage, 19% over expectations. They've been a team that has not been willing to do that so far this year because of maybe protecting him a bit. He takes a ton of sacks. He's top 3 sack rate guy so far this season. But in this game, 525 passing yards. That's what everyone's going to be talking about in that one. And 153 of those passing yards he put up in the fourth quarter, up by 20 points. So I think maybe that's part of why it's a little bit more narrow. But again, it's like these big plays they had. They had a 68-yard touchdown on a blown coverage to Tyler Boyd. They had a 52-yard big pass to T. Higgins in double coverage, a 52-yard run from Joe Mixon. All that sort of stuff was going on. But just a huge performance and an onslaught here on the Ravens. Can we take away, though, how much can we take away from this game, being that we have, the JV team at best starting at cornerback? Again, like an unheard of sort of problem going on here for the Ravens on the back end.
Yeah, I think the main takeaway for me is like they actually did let Joe Burrow cook here on Sunday. And I do think that is the way that they are going to be successful in the AFC playoff race. They need to rely on him a lot more than what they have so far in 2021. They need to rely on him a lot more than what they have with Joe Mixon. If they do that, they're a very dangerous team. I think their receiving unit, obviously one of the best in the NFL already at a really young age. So if they let that happen, even if they lose out this year, I think the future is going to be much brighter for them. If they lose, with Joe Burrow slinging the rock downfield, and if they're just kind of trying to pound in the line with Joe Mixon at quarterback. So we'll see. 14 explosive plays, 359 yards on those explosive plays. Obviously, some massive chunk plays, like you said, against Ravens secondary that has no business being on the field right now, outside of the COVID situation, the injury situations that they've dealt with. So I'm taking away the fact that if Zach Taylor lets Joe Burrow cook, the Bengals are a really dangerous team already, and they could make some potential noise here in the AFC playoff race when it's all said and done.
Yeah, I think it's close to 80-ish, maybe 85% chance that they're going to make the playoffs. They don't have an easy schedule, though, for the Bengals.
No,
so they
not
really
easy.
just need to win one of these two games. And
they need to beat the Browns in week 18.
In.
Yeah, they need to beat the Browns in week 18, and then they win the division, basically, is all it comes down to. So this game doesn't really matter a whole lot, the Chiefs matchup with them this weekend. Obviously, if they win, I do think they win the division as is in week 17, but it's definitely not as detrimental of a loss if they actually.
Yeah. Well, I think it matters in that it's tougher to win, but if they win, it seals up the playoffs. Basically,
right,
they're in the playoffs if they win this because it eliminates the Browns. So if they win this game, they could get a nice little thing here of eliminating the Browns, who they're going to face the next week. The Browns will already be dead at that point before they're even playing them the next week. But so they can still make it without necessarily having the division. If they win this one, it's going to almost wrap things up. Actually, I'm seeing here, if they win next week, there's like an outside chance that they could get the bye because beating the Chiefs to lower the Chiefs slightly. And then Tennessee, they can lose some games. So that would be wild. That'd be wild. I mean, very outside chance. We're talking about like 5%
less than
chance
3,
or something like that if they can win this game. But so there is definitely something at stake for them in this next game. And then the Ravens, they're probably still at, 25% chance to make the playoffs, but that's inaccurate, I would say, because it's not really factoring in how awful this defense is. They have the Rams and the Steelers that they have to play, so they got to win these games. And then in order to get in, and we're probably overvaluing their probability of winning those games with the defense being so bad. So it's probably under 20%-ish sort of chance. And, I love the Ravens, but unfortunately, I could pass on seeing them in the playoffs with this team, the way that it's going. All right, so before we get through a few more games we can power through here, let's get through our last sponsor. That's Western and Southern. Want a chance to win the ultimate game day feast, whether it's football success or financial savvy? Winning starts with asking us questions. Would you like to know what it's like behind the scenes with Al on Sunday Night Football? How about a need to know for your financial future? Western and Southern is teaming up with PFF's very own Chris Collinsworth to share insights that can put you ahead on both your fantasy and financial scoreboards. Every submission earns you a chance to win the ultimate feast to celebrate football's favorite Sunday. We'll cover your catering up to $2,500. Coordinate your order from a restaurant near you and have it delivered on February 13th, 2022. And don't forget to check out the Chris Collinsworth podcast and Western and Southern's Instagram for answers to the best questions each week. Submit your questions at westernsouthern.com/askchris. One more time, that's westernsouthern.com/askchris. And if you're watching on YouTube channel, check out the link in the description below. Remember, with Western and Southern, you can rest assured on game day. And now let's get back to a few of these quick ones we can get by here. Bears at Seattle Seahawks. Seahawks 7-point favorites. The Bears win on a last-second touchdown, 25-21. I have the Bears being a better team in this one, 18-15. Seattle actually had a better success rate and their efficiency, but they weren't doing a whole lot outside of some big plays, some big long plays to DK Metcalf and Gerald Everett. 181 passing yards for Russ here in the snow. 161 net yards if you take away the 20 sack yards here. And I think the big story coming out of this were some more rumbles on this. What is Russ going to be traded in the offseason, with Pete Carroll specifically pointing the finger at Russell Wilson for taking a 13-yard sack on third down from the Bears' 8-yard line, which led to a missed field goal from 39 yards out. So it would have been even more of a chip shot, still pretty chippy, under 40 yards, even in that weather. It would have been a 10-point lead. They probably went up to about 98% in win probability. Instead, they went down to about 90% in win probability. And of course, they have the Nick Foles. Nick Foles is good for this. Big D Nick comes through with the win here. I got this weird thing going with Russell where I've been saying the worse he plays, lowers his trade value, which makes it more difficult to trade him in the offseason in a way. Because I don't think Seattle fans are dumping Russ over these few performances. Like they're going to want something. If you're going to say, hey, we traded Russ for a first and a conditional like second round pick, like they're going to be upset about that, despite the fact that I think that's what they want. And there are a lot of teams who can talk themselves out of Russell Wilson. A lot of offensive coordinators who are in their bag, like they don't necessarily want a guy who runs around a whole bunch on a broken play and then throws it to somebody. Like, what am I here for? What's my purpose? So I think his trade value might be a little bit lower as people think. Again, this is another thing we could rehash on a week-by-week basis. But what do you think about the rumblings here? The rumblings out of Seattle and Pete Carroll dissatisfaction manifested.
Yeah, I definitely think it's real, right? I do think one of two things are going to happen. Either Pete Carroll gets fired or Russell Wilson gets traded. Maybe both happen, but I do think one of them absolutely has to happen here before we head into the 2020s.
Do you think Pete Carroll can get fired? Do you think Pete Carroll can actually get
fired? He should. I mean,
I'm not hearing a lot about it.
I know. I think it should, though. I think it's a better long-term approach for the Seattle Seahawks.
No, I totally agree with that. I just feel like he
seems untouchable, upset. Right? Yeah.
People are more upset at him when they're winning, and they weren't cooking when they're winning than they are now, at least from what I'm seeing.
Yeah, he's not getting much of the blame for this 2021 season. I'll definitely give you that. So, it is what it is. I think maybe it's not just the fact that 2021 has been a disaster. I do think there has been some things at the cracks, bursting here in prior years as well. But it does seem similar to like in the Mike Zimmer vein. I do think it's probably time for the Seattle Seahawks to move on from Pete Carroll, similar to how it is from Minnesota Vikings. It just doesn't seem in the current state of this team that they're going to be able to challenge for a Super Bowl given the current makeup of it. So we'll see. I think it's best to probably tear it down and rebuild. That's what all that I really want is for teams to actually bottom out respectfully, right? Not try and go in and be 8-8 for the rest or whatever it is, 8-9 now, 9-8 for the rest of their lives. Basically, I want to see some teams actually bottom out and then build back up to what we could actually see from them. But it's just not going to happen in Seattle.
It's hard when you don't even have your first round pick because
that's why it's such a disaster, right? I mean, they win all in. And they are not even close to a team that should be going all in, and they have done it. So the only real opportunity for them is to bottom out, in my opinion. So we'll see if they actually do that.
I mean, the only other thing I'll mention here, just to inflame the Justin Fields apologists out there, who I like to pick at. Hey, they win and Fields out, and I throw another quarterback in, and hey, they win another game. Not that it was a fantastic performance by Foles, but maybe the rookie quite as good vis-a-vis the other options that they have there, as some people want to think. Just saying. Okay, let's get Steelers Kansas City. What was, again, this was the Romo game, and yikes City on this one. Kansas City 10-point favorite. They were up, it seemed like 28 to nothing before the first quarter. It was so
right.
It was so bad. 36-10 to Kansas City. We got some Chad Henne in this game. 34-18 is my adjusted score here. Do we care about this game? Because what we may care about a little bit is we saw Kansas City blitzkrieg offense beyond just their first possession. They've come out strong in their first possession in a lot of games where you're like, Kansas City's offense is back. You're partying in the streets, confetti is flying all over the place. And then they just mediocre met out the rest of the season.
Right.
This is the Steelers defense, which is not god awful, right? I saw TJ Watt, I believe, was on the field for this one, and they kept pouring it on here with no Travis Kelce. Travis Kelce was holding back this offense. I think it's the only thing that you could really get out of this here. Of course, that's a joke here, but what do you think about what the offense here? And Pat was using his guys. I saw Noah Gray making some catches. I saw Pringle time going on here. CEH actually made his first play of his career, so maybe that first round pick was worth it until he ended up injuring himself eventually here. But that was all part of their long plan for the first round pick to eventually start doing something in week 16 of his second season. Right. What do you think? Are we taking anything away from this game?
Yeah, I mean, it is encouraging to see Byron Pringle, I would say, actually be successful in that second wide receiver position. I do think that is.
They need somebody.
A key part of this offense once you're actually playing a team that could maybe keep pace with them offensively. So that's a big takeaway. And then defensively, Steelers are a team that I've basically been fading all year. I did have the under 45.5, which didn't break, right? Mike Tomlin basically kicked a field goal down 30 points basically in the third quarter for God knows what reason. Ben Roethlisberger,
that should be part of your model, though. That should be part of your model for him to do something like that.
then Ben Roethlisberger had like the strip sack fumble where the Chiefs got a late field goal as well in the fourth quarter. But yeah, I mean, the Chiefs defense, like they, for whatever reason, have all of a sudden started to play pretty well. I'm wondering if that's going to be sustainable against some actual NFL offenses. We'll see if that actually carries forward or not. But I do think the Chiefs are the team to beat from my perspective in the NFL and should be the best option from a betting perspective to win the Super Bowl.
So, yeah, I mean, they are leading the Super Bowl odds now at plus 400. The Packers are plus 450 last time I checked. I'm going to change after last night. And the Chiefs, Patrick Mahomes, after all that's happened this season, he's up to 4th in EPA per play right now for the season, behind Stafford, behind Rodgers, behind Jimmy Garoppolo. Jimmy Garoppolo.
Still like 15th in PFF passing grade.
Yeah. I don't want to slam PFF. Right. I can't do that. But Joe Burrow, come on, first in PFF grade.
Come on.
So
that's
we got
like
the
a slap
Falcons
in the face for you with all the sacks and stuff like
that.
Yeah,
I know. I can't stand the sacks. So we got the Falcons out. We got them out the paint in the NFC. We need to get the Steelers out. And they're still have like a 10-15% win probability. It's driving me insane to think that they might make it here. They have the Browns and the Ravens. So we need them out, and I will take the Ravens over the Steelers. Even though I say I don't want the Ravens, I would definitely take the Ravens and their JV back end versus the Steelers. So let's get this done. Browns and Ravens, let's get this done. Get the Steelers out of the playoffs. And Big Ben, great career, Hall of Fame career, but we
see you on the other side.
Yeah. Exactly. Okay. This is probably the least buzzworthy game for two teams that have like legitimate playoff hopes going into this was the Broncos at the Raiders. I mean, no one was talking about, they refused to flip over the game until Patrick Mahomes was taken out, and they put Henny in. And then when they flipped it over, where I am, at least in Florida, they flipped it over immediately just to watch Derek Carr kneel the ball. That's what they would not even flip it over until we got to that point. So that shows you like how unattractive this game was, despite, again, playoff chances. At least it was prior to this game. The Broncos are now dead after losing 17-13. I had 27-8, so even a bit more, a bigger difference here, and 25% success rate for the Broncos offense. That's less than the first percentile as far as how bad it was. 20 expected points lost on turnovers is what kept the Broncos in it. Is the fact that the Raiders had so many turnovers that helped keep them in it. Drew Lock at an 86 grade in this game. Again, I don't want to, Chris. Hopefully, Chris, I don't think he's listening to this podcast, but if he is, I don't want to, I don't want to get on the grading too much here, but I don't even want to know how that happened, because trust me, it can't be deserved. I don't care how many drops there were. I don't care anything. This is an awful, awful offensive performance for the Broncos here. And the Raiders, 20-25% chance to make the playoffs here. They have the Colts and the Chargers to go. We probably need to get the Raiders up out of the paint. They might be a little bit interesting, but I think we need to get them out. And anything you're taking from this game?
Not really. No, I mean, this is basically the future that football guys want. Not for me whatsoever, basically. So
I didn't hear him talking about this one, unfortunately. Josh Jacobs. What did Josh Jacobs do to Eric Eager? Because he was railing on Josh Jacobs after this game. I thought Jacobs was okay. He's doing what he can do. It's not. Don't hate the player, hate the game.
Hate the game.
Right. He doesn't. Not his fault that he got drafted in the first round. But anyway, we could see Carr. What about Carr? Is there any chance he's actually gone from the Raiders next year?
He's like the only thing that's good about the Raiders, I would say.
No, I agree. Outside
of their defense, right? I mean,
people have talked about the fact of whether they can want out or not, but I don't really see that either. He's been one of these Raiders for life, I feel so loyal sort of guys, and I think he is kind of in that boat, despite the fact that they've been buzz about getting rid of him every offseason. So we're probably seeing Carr come back. And I don't know. It's a slog. I don't know what they're going to do at head coach. The fact that they could be in the playoffs is just weird this season.
They did get over their win total in this one. So we had them at 6.5, and then they closed 7, even 7.5 in certain spots. To go over the win total, I think it was a little concerning at stretches during the midpoint of the season. But I think they've exceeded expectations. I do think Derek Carr should be back. I agree. what does happen at the coaching position. And then obviously they need to figure out something outside of Hunter Renfrow at wide receiver now with the whole Henry Ruggs situation. But other than that, I mean, I think they're not a team that you'd ever expect to ever compete for a Super Bowl, but they could definitely be in the playoff picture again here in 2022 from my perspective.
Yeah. I think if they can get healthy, like if they can get Darren Waller back out there, because the defense is doing it. Like it's just weird to have a Raiders defense that's playing relatively well. And I think that's helped Derek Carr's standing a lot because he's not necessarily better than he has been in the past, but they're staying in games and he's not just garbage time. And he's not, throwing the ball away on fourth down at the end of games when he's losing and things like that. They're actually winning some games here. Okay, so the weirdest outcome of the week. Let's get to this one. Staley catching some heat I've seen on the wire here, and that is the Chargers losing to the Houston Texans, 13-point favorites. They lose 41-29, and it wasn't like it was a weird score. It was a little bit flipped over though, and my adjusted scores actually have the Chargers being slightly better, which is a little bit weird here, but it's just heavily based on all these turnovers that Herbert was having. And, maybe it shouldn't be so reliant upon that, which is really weird though. If you look at the Chargers in this game, they had a 65% success rate, literally 100th percentile success rate in this game, but they had negative 18 expected points on turnovers. Herbert was averaging 9.6 yards per attempt if he wasn't throwing near pick sixes and multiple turnovers, and the defense was just getting gashed in this one. And it wasn't just the run; it was also Davis Mills with big time throws, with only a 6% pressure rate on Davis Mills during this game. That was really the issue. So turnovers and poor defense actually masked what was underlying a decent offensive performance for the Chargers, but they just got smoked in this one.
Right, definitely. I had a lot of skill position players out, obviously, with the COVID situations and everything else. So maybe that played a little bit of a role. But yeah, I agree with you 100%. I mean, Davis Mills, Houston Texans passing offense were like 0.435 EPA per passing attempt. I mean, if you would have told me Davis Mills was going to throw for that in any game in 2021, I would have told you you're crazy, right? So I mean, he looked the part on Sunday. Brandon Staley's supposed to be, this heavy defensive guru sort of guy. The defense is just not playing well right now. So I definitely think, they're kind of sliding out of the playoff race. If they're not even out of it completely right now, they might just have a little bit of a shot left to go. But yeah, it's weird, man. The Chargers are a really difficult team to project on a week-to-week basis, and I think that they might be the most difficult team to project on a week-to-week basis. I can't think of another team that I've had so much trouble trying to figure out how they're actually going to perform on any given week. So
yeah, it's weird. The Texans now, like, is Davis Mills like playing himself into 22 Texans?
Definitely. I think he is.
Yeah,
I think he has.
I think he probably is. I mean, the Texans are down to third in the draft order. They're 2 games behind the Jacksonville Jaguars now, so they're pretty much out of it. What's interesting though is you have the 2 edge guys. Again, I don't know anything about the draft.
Aiden Hutchinson,
Kayvon
Thibodeau.
And Thibodeau's are the 2 guys. So they may be playing themselves out of one of those guys. So maybe that opens up the possibility that they can look at a quarterback there. Although I just don't think there's a guy.
There's just not a guy that
high right now. So yeah, we're talking about the Davis and Mac Mills.
Right. It's like a Derek
2022.
Stingley, probably Derek Stingley at 3 or something like that. Makes some sense to them, maybe a little bit, trying to, help out the defense a little bit. But I do think, I think that's not a terrible play, because they could bottom out in 2022 if Davis Mills doesn't ball out again in the sophomore season. And then they are, right there for a number of high quality quarterback prospects in the next draft. So I think that's got to be their long-term plan. I don't think anybody thought this was going to be like a 1-year rebuilding plan for the Houston Texans here in 2021 only. Maybe if they do something with Deshaun Watson in the offseason, they can pick up some more, draft picks and other things and pieces like that. But I think it's definitely going to be 2 years at the top of the draft class, and then maybe they can get that quarterback prospect in 2023. So
what's weird is I feel like Davis Mills has actually been better than his
grade.
We have him graded in the 50s, and I don't know, man. If you consider like what he has around him, right? Like this is by far seen as being the worst team in the NFL going into the year. I mean, 12 big time throws, 17 turnover worthy plays, not great. But he's only taken 28 sacks. Again, it's one of these things where I think we might be undervaluing the fact that he gets rid of the ball so quickly. He only has a 2.5 average time to throw, which is way faster than a lot of these other rookies who have not been doing well. No Brandon Cooks in this game.
Right.
He's willing to throw the ball down the field. I mean, they also had a pretty big win against the Patriots earlier this year, which I think was funny. People were talking about going ape shit over the fact that the Chargers lost this game and what it says about their coaching, this and that, blah, blah. I mean, whatever. Teams can win sometimes, right? It happens. They beat down the Patriots earlier this year. So we're going to fire Bill Belichick based upon that? No. But yeah, I think Mills, not a starter, but like if you had a good surrounding cast around him, he is maybe a guy that could get you like a 500 sort of team if he grows over the next year. So he's an interesting name out there, but it's not something you're going to get excited about. But I feel like he might be playing better than some of the rookies out there.
I mean, he definitely is playing better than some of the other rookies out there. I mean, that's not even a question right now. And
yeah,
it is kind of interesting
wins. He actually has some signature wins, unlike these other guys.
But the thing is, like with Davis Mills, I mean, he was a highly thought of recruit heading into college, right? Like he had the big arm, he had a lot of these things. So maybe he's a little bit of this like poor man's Justin Herbert, where he didn't necessarily have the great any sort of season in college football. Justin Herbert obviously had a great junior year, really poor senior year. Davis Mills never really had that, but he had the what quote unquote intangibles, the tools, those sorts of things to be really thought of high prospect heading into college football. And maybe there are some things there and traits there that he could potentially build on a little bit. Maybe he was
I don't think he has like Herbert traits, obviously, he's like a quarterback defense destroying robot, but I mean, he wasn't a high prospect coming into college, but we talked about Derek Carr earlier. I could see him being like a Derek Carr-ish sort of guy, gets the ball out quickly, can execute, has a decent enough arm, everything else like that. We'll see if he can play himself into that sort of stuff going forward. Carr took a big leap in his second year after being looking okay, but having very poor numbers in his first year. All right, let's finish it off with the Sunday Night Football game. The Washington football team at Dallas Cowboys. Dallas 10-point favorite, 56-14. The adjusted score, not that it really even matters in this, was 41-10. This probably was the best bet that I ever had, setting the football team plus 10.5. I was all excited about getting that half point in a bunch of different places here after it moved down. And I guess it's a meaningful game for the Cowboys offense getting back on track, because that was the question. Their defense had come around. Their offense was in a nosedive. Dak, 0.4 EPA per play, 80 grade, 330 yards, 4 touchdowns, and only 180 rushing yards in a blowout. So this is really a passing dominated game there. The Washington's done. Cowboys maybe have a 25-ish% chance of getting that number 1 seed. How much are you taking from this game? Again, that's like the big question for all of these different games, because when they're blowouts, I agree that Dak played well, but do we need to see another 1 or 2 of these games before we feel like Dak is back? Or do we take the prior of thinking Dak is good and we're basing it on that?
I think I'm taking the prior that I thought Dak was good, and I do think that they are back now, right? And I think one of the main reasons for that is Tyron Smith was out of this game. The other time that happened was against Kansas City Chiefs, when the Dallas Cowboys put up 9 points in a really poor offensive performance. They were kind of able to alleviate that situation here on Sunday Night Football, and I think it was kind of what we were waiting for, to see this offense kind of hitting on all cylinders. So I'm kind of resting on my priors a little bit, and I do think that the Cowboys are very dangerous here in the NFC, and this was kind of the performance I wanted to see, and I do think it is like the perfect step for them kind of heading into the playoffs right now. And I do think that they are one of the most dangerous and complete teams in the NFL right now. So
what's weird about this Cowboys defense is that everyone says, look at this guy, look at Lawrence, look at Diggs,
Parsons,
Micah Parsons. But other than Parsons, like, wait a second, these dudes were here before, right? So if we have this dominant talent defense, how come they stink? How come they were always so bad before? Can Micah Parsons really be the secret sauce that they're adding to this defense that brings it all together? Is everything happening to hit? Is Dan Quinn really this mastermind? We're talking Dan Quinn head coaching, which I'm
crazy.
I'm getting flashbacks to some of the 4th down calls that Dan Quinn has had. Maybe the worst one ever, I think, when they were down by 4 points and he kicked a field goal. like from the inside the 5-yard line with 3.5 minutes left to go or something like
right.
that.
Dan Campbell-esque.
Yeah. So what's going on here with this defense? Can we trust this defense? Because I think they're good. I think it's very good that it's turned over to being a pass rush dominant defense as opposed to a interception dominant defense. But I still don't know because it seems to be a little bit high risk, high reward what they're doing on here. So can they catch the bad side of variance in one of these games? And then we're like, oh, what happened to this Cowboys defense?
I mean, they could definitely catch the bad variance in one game, but I do think they are a lot better than, it just being Micah Parsons, right? Obviously, Diggs, rookie last year, rookie cornerback situation, maybe struggled a little bit in that rookie season. I think I'm willing to give him a pass that he kind of took the next step here in 2021. So I do think it's a number of confounding things, but of course, it goes back to the fact we don't really want to rest on our belief in a defense in order to actually win football games. And I think that is probably what makes Dallas so dangerous, right? Because they do have the defense. They can probably win with only that defense, but their offense is capable of scoring against any team in the NFL right now too. So I do think not only do they have the defense, they also have the offense. And I think that's kind of the reasoning for why they're looking like, the team that can maybe be the best actual bet or value bet here to win the Super Bowl right now. So
yeah. And I think offensively, like when you sort of think about it, guys have missed time. Dak has missed time. He's looked like he could have been injured.
Right.
The Cooper's missed time. CeeDee Lamb has missed some time. Yeah. Tyron Smith has missed some time. Gallup, all these guys. But you start going through and you're like, wait a second. These guys are all potentially healthy for the playoffs. Right. They're basically one of the few teams where you can really point to having this enormous sum of talent and things going right. They could be a number 1 seed. They could be completely healthy. Right. Going into the playoffs, you start to do all these calculations. You're like, wait a second, this is like the Super Bowl run is coming together better than you ever could have expected for any team this season for this Cowboys team.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I agree 100%. I do think, I've kind of been buying into him a little bit over the last 4 weeks. And that was one of the reasons why I really was excited to see this offensive performance. And it is something that's like, yeah, it was one game, but I do think projecting that forward now with the fact that they all are healthy, they have the wide receiver trio, they have both running backs, they have, the offensive line, everything's kind of in place, and they are, probably hitting on all cylinders at the right time with everybody healthy. And I do think that is a pretty scary proposition for the rest of the NFL right now.
So. Yeah. The Dak takes, if they make an early exit from the playoffs on a poor offensive performance, are going to be explosive. Right. It's going to be explosive. Right. So
we can just blame the defense then. We can just blame the defense then, right?
We'll see what if the defense plays well. They lose.
Right. It's like 14-10 or something. Yeah.
Yeah. Dan Orlovsky will be like, I was right the entire time. Everybody will be planting their flags on there. So anyway, great couple of weeks here left to go. Make sure to tune in also to the Friday show here where we're going to go over the Thursday night game and preview some best bets for the weekend. Otherwise, we'll be coming back at you with the flagship show here on Tuesdays to wrap up everything. Thanks again to Ben Brown for joining me, and I'll be talking to everyone next week. Thanks.